This episode of our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by Zapper. Zapper is one of the world's leading XR companies. Over the past 12 years, they've won numerous awards for memorable campaigns. They've democratized AR by making tools and SDKs that anyone can use. And they created ZapBox, the world's most affordable mixed reality headset. Most recently, Zapper worked with Unilever to create an enhanced QR code called Accessible QR, which enables packaged goods to speak to the blind and partially sighted. If you're thinking XR, give the team at Zapper a call or visit zapper.com to see how they can help you on your XR journey. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink with Ted Shulowitz and Roni Abovitz. It's December 22nd, 2023, and it's This Week in XR. Today, our guest is Sarah Hill, the founder and CEO of Healium. Sarah was guest number one, Ted. Guest number one in the summer of 2020 when we started off with this harebrained idea to do a podcast inside of VR, which quickly became just a regular podcast. And so here we are 4 years later, welcoming Sarah back. And of course, we have Roni with us as a co-host now. So I'm excited to chat with her both about the podcast and what's happened in the past 4 years, but also her company Healium, which now counts among others the Mayo Clinic among its investors, and it's for brainwave training, and she'll tell us about it. It's a pretty exciting new technology that will be hailed as an overnight success, but will of course have taken 10 years.
Yeah,
So
we should go back in time and listen to what we sounded like and thought the world was going to be like 4 years ago when we had Sarah on, and see how we've evolved.
oh yeah,
See how she's evolved.
I've never listened to a 4-year-old show. Have
Yeah,
you?
me neither. No, it just sort of struck me as you sort of mentioned it. Like, wow, be interesting to go back in time and see how it affected how everything has affected everything. That's very interesting.
So not a big news week this week, which should be a surprise to nobody. Finally, the news is calming down, even though CES, the consumer, what used to be called the Consumer Electronics Show, is around the corner. We could talk about that, but a story broke last Friday, and I'm surprised it didn't get more play. Um, when OpenAI shuts down ByteDance's access to its API via the Azure cloud because they were accused, according to Alex Heath of The Verge, of using OpenAI to train their own large language model, which is a big no-no. Not exactly illegal, I guess, but it's a big violation of the terms of service, and they were promptly shut down. So I'm looking for more on this, but it does play into a frequent theme, and one I know, Roni, you feel very passionately about, which that ByteDance is not an honest company.
Well, let me jump on that one, Charlie. It's like you threw the grenade on the floor. I think it's important for I'm gonna change this from ByteDance to U.S. China. There's a bigger picture of U.S. and West technology and how China's ascending and becoming a superpower and is a superpower, and its attitude about the importation of technology, the copy paste, and even theft of technology. Um, and if you want to turn a blind eye and think that China is not actively pursuing like American tech and IP, you have no idea what you're talking about. So I would say ByteDance is a manifestation of one of the many myriad ways they approach increasing their own technical capability through almost any means. And this is something the US has been very, I would say, poor and slow to respond to. And as someone who's built tech companies that has had to weather sort of these like nation state attacks, what it feels like is being like a pioneer in a fort attacked from all sides, and the government doesn't do a lot to help you. Here you've got Microsoft, which is gigantic, and OpenAI, which is sizable, that they're able to kind of summon their own capabilities to understand what a nation state is doing to them and going, wait, this is one way you are trying to import our proprietary IP to yourself, but there's thousands of ways. If you actually go down the rabbit hole and you do the diligence and do some of the work to understand how China, North Korea, Iran, and others actually tried to siphon away American IP and technology and Western IP and tech. It's pretty intense, and I think this is an example of that. Probably even benign relative to other things I've actually seen. So it is interesting, like why our government, the United States government, does not act more proactively and more intensely to sort of protect U.S. companies and the original things we do. And by the way, protect any company. If you're a Chinese company, invent your own stuff, you file your own IP, great. But if your business model is to copy, steal, paste, trade theft, that's not the way the world should operate. It's not a fair system, and we need ways to really protect that. And we've sort of turned a blind eye because we want that Chinese market. And this has sort of been a weird back and forth between the governments. Sorry about the diatribe, but I think this whole ByteDance thing is one little example of a much bigger problem going on. Ted, great to hear your take on it.
Well, here's a take on that take. As you were talking, I was quickly looking up one of the largely considered most failed albums in all of rock history, as compared to this particular band's previous efforts, which were considered shocking and stunning successes. And that album was called Chinese Democracy from
Guns N'
Guns N'
Roses,
Roses.
baby.
I was just looking it up. Came out November 23rd, 2008, which was a very auspicious time in the United States.
Hey, Axel, if you're listening to us, we love you, man.
We do. And the reason I brought this up was as you were talking about the conceptualization, and this is from someone who's been to China many, many times. I have logged, certainly not as many hours living in the United States as being in China, but damn close. I spent a lot of time in Asia and a lot of time in China over the years. And there is a version of what we refer to as Chinese democracy. And what I am reflecting on is AI in general, generative AI in general, and its tenets and its attempts to kind of eat the world are a version of Chinese democracy because they have less care for rights and clearances and ownership as a sort of core tenet, which gets into this interesting philosophical discussion of intellectual property versus inspiration. But Chinese culture, aka Chinese democracy, tends to lean into this more open, steal it, fake it till you make it kind of culture based on their long history of oppression and fighting against oppression. And their idea of capitalism is skewed to our idea of capitalism and is actually, it would be interesting to see if others that really study this way more than I do, in many ways, it aligns a lot with the concepts of what AI is doing, which is it's all a little fuzzy and we don't exactly know who owns what. So we're just going to kind of go for it and let the chips fall where they may. And I think that's a bit what ByteDance did, which is kind of why they're probably like, in their perspective, we didn't steal anything. What are you talking about?
Well, I
AI
think
just allows us to do this.
what makes this different is the internal communications that Alex got his hands on, which, include ByteDance employees talking to each other on company message boards about how to properly, what is the phrase that he used? Data wash things so that they can't be traced, and sort of being very open about it within the company. So, which
Hey,
is
Charlie,
evidence.
let's be even-handed, though. Hang on a second.
Yeah,
The data that OpenAI has accumulated
I'm
from
glad you
all
brought
of
this up.
us, the data
That's
from
my
all
point.
of us,
I know
I'm
that's the
sorry,
irony of this.
you got like one stealing from the thief. So it's like, hang on a second, like let's make this.
But I
The
think
other piece, which Ted hinted on, which is really key, if you and it really opened my eyes visiting. This is like years back at Mako, like visiting over there. That the culture is one of sharing and passing on. So copying, and it's not thought of as copying and stealing. It's like constant improvement amongst the population. So there
Correct.
isn't this proprietary, I own it. It's like share it and you can work on it and add it. So it's a collective mindset, which Ted, you were hinting at is like a giant AI brain. They've
Yeah.
been operating like a giant analog AI brain, and that's the irony of it.
So this is a classic example of Chinese democracy. And AI, in many ways, is a classic example of Chinese democracy. So take it for what it's worth, guys. Uh, it's worth studying. It's philosophical.
meanwhile, all our kids are on TikTok. Right? All right, moving on from our pet peeve. We'll come back to this. I have a feeling soon. Um, so this week on display, there were a lot of contrasting views about the state of XR as we are entering the next year. We're certainly going to see at CES where things kind of stand. It's a good marker for that, what the year is going to bring, and also what the companies are feeling about themselves and their prospects. So, last year CES was all about the metaverse. I don't think anybody's going to say that word this year. Everybody was sort of started the AI thing was starting last year. It's going to be all about AI this year, and I think that's one of XR's big problems is that AI has just sucked all the air out of the room. It seems like super not relevant when you're talking about something as big as AI. You also have some very weird things happening with the numbers, partly because of the transition from the Quest 2, which people stopped buying, to the Quest 3, which is seeing some, I guess, decent but not sort of unbelievable pickup. That made 2023 look like a really bad year, maybe worse than it really was, but it also shows that we're not growing very fast. IDC says because of that, 2024 is going to look really good. So we'll see, is AR, VR up or down, or in particular VR? Sony is not sharing any information about PlayStation 2 sales. Um, I think critics liked it well enough, as much as certainly the PlayStation 1 got, but I don't know. I don't know.
Can we
There's,
just
Microsoft. I mean, I think it was capped off. The week of pessimism was capped off by Microsoft announcing that Windows MR is no more, and it looks like the Army deal and the HoloLens are a thing of the past, as Satya is no longer hugging um, Kipman on stage at Mobile World Congress, but instead he's hanging out with Sam. And it's just over.
Charlie, can we say this though? Everything around this industry is now centered around Apple's launch next year of basically Vision Pro. All the other stuff is getting dusted, which Apple likes because it's like Vision Pro forward. That's why 24 will work, because everyone is like nothing matters until they ship, and then everyone will copy around Apple for the next 10 years. That's the mindset of consumer electronics. If you guys think differently, but I think that's why this year sucked, because Apple showed up and said, we're putting out Vision Pro in 24. Nothing else matters until we ship. And that's why 23 sucks. I don't know, Ted, if you've got a different view, Charlie, but I think that's what's going on.
Apparently today is my day to wax philosophically. Right, so it's the end of the year. Ted waxes philosophically. So, and I've mentioned my philosophy on this podcast and many other things that I've done, speaking gigs around the state of virtual reality, mixed reality, and it is essentially the thesis that you cannot artificially try and bring something into mass market acceptance and use case. As you know, I'm super bullish on virtual reality, mixed reality. I was super bullish on what you were doing with Magic Leap, Roni, and super bullish around technological advancements, right? I've kind of made a little bit of a career about it. But I also have a very high sense of recognition, maybe because of my kind of life in this world of technology, that just throwing money at a sector and overwhelming dollars at a sector to try and force it into the belief structure that it's going to be really big, really fast is often a recipe for disaster. And I look at things in the technological sector that started off with small nuggets and then grew organically into things that are humongous, right? The internet at large is one of those things. YouTube is one of those things. Cellular communications is one of those things. Cable television is one of those things. Television as an entity is one of those things, right? They didn't have one or two quote unquote tech giants trying to just throw huge amounts of capital to try and force a market into existence. Markets come into existence because there's a genuine need and desire, which Charlie, you and I talk about all the time, about where are the real hit spots? Where are the veins of success of virtual reality and mixed reality? And there are many, many of them that are very legitimately valuable, right-sized businesses. But VR is not as big as television yet and may never be. VR is not as big as the internet in all of its forms yet, and likely will never be. The metaverse, as a terminology, is not as big as what we commonly refer to as all things internet related, which we now, have the transition from what we like to call Web 2 to Web 3. The metaverse is a vein of that. It cannot be forced into a larger existence than people actually want or need, right? And virtual reality, I feel, is more exotic than people realize. And I think about it every time. I put on a headset a lot still. I did a lot of Golf Plus yesterday because it was pouring rain
Yeah.
in LA. So I was in Golf Plus for a couple of hours. But I also know that's not an everyday thing, even for me, right? That's someone that's supposed to be doing this for a living. So I think at some point, and it's a good example of what Microsoft is doing by essentially killing off alt space a year ago, and now sort of doing another pullback on this. Is they're smart enough to realize that they got over their skis, they overshot what they thought the market would be, and now the business people at Microsoft are kind of like, all right, well, you know what, that didn't work, or it didn't work yet, so let's pull back and reorganize. And I think the HoloLens is a perfect example of that in many ways, right? And Roni, Magic Leap is a perfect example of that in many ways. For all the success that you created and all the push that you put into the world, it just wasn't ready for that organic growth cycle yet. So I don't know if you guys agree or disagree, but
Well,
that's
I think
how I look at that.
we often talk about patterns in company behavior, and there's certainly one in Microsoft in that they don't cry over spilled milk, right? They bought Nokia. 18 months later, they shut it down. It cost them $8 billion or something like that. And so it wouldn't surprise me if they just sort of said, you know what, good technology, good learning, bad timing. We're moving on to AI. See a HoloLens. We'll talk to you in 10 years.
Yeah, and the interesting story about Nokia, it's a great one to bring up, is that part of Nokia, the Windows Phone, didn't work, organically didn't grow. But Nokia as a company is stunningly successful at what they do and continue to be in the underpinnings
Right.
of 3G, 4G, 5G communications and forms of the internet. And people don't talk about that as much because it's not sexy, it's not consumer facing.
Right.
But a lot of companies that exist in this world never had that massive, consumer track. They just live underneath the covers. Look at who maybe is the most successful company in virtual reality. It's maybe Qualcomm, by selling chips to every manufacturer
right.
that
Well,
deliver
that's
all
a
this.
same
NVIDIA and
story.
AI.
Exactly.
And
That's
NVIDIA
what I
and
was going
AI.
to say.
Can
But
I
here's
can I
what's
wax philosophical for one sec, Charlie?
let me just
Okay.
make one point, and then we'll go to you and bring Sarah in. I think what's changed in my view of this is I don't think that uh, the wearable headset is going to be the successor to mobile. I thought that like 5 years ago. I have to say I was pretty sincere in that belief, but I actually don't think that's true anymore. Maybe it's because it's taking so long, but maybe it's not exactly the right form factor. Amazing technology, but is it going to replace phones? I don't see it. There's too much friction, too much expense. The technology is too hard. I do think assistive, augmentive things like Ray-Ban stories, maybe. But display all day, every day display glasses. I'm just not a believer anymore. Sorry, go ahead, Ronnie.
Let me I'll just philosophically disagree with you, but semi agree. One, I think the issue with this whole field is where on the timeline are we? Computing is a timeline from the 1940s on, and personal computing, moving from servers to the big PC on your desk to the laptop to the mobile laptop to the phone. If you look at that, we kind of thought XR might have been further down the line, but things move fast and slow. So there's like where we're really on the curve. But I think one of the ways to identify where we are on the curve is like, what are the characteristics? And Charlie, this is sort of a debate we can keep having, not right now. I think the all day, every day requires radical change in form factor until it hits like Oakley size, no wire, lightweight,
Yeah.
all the goodness that you want. Then it hits it. Until then, you just have adoption.
So
That's, I
maybe
think,
I'm just cynical about the timeline because what you're talking about is like
But
10,
Sarah's
20
here.
years.
Let's
Yes.
bring Sarah in.
Sarah, so good to see you. You are always and always will be guest number one.
Hey, I was happy to be your first. So, this is a great nerdy play date, as I call it, and it's always good to see you.
Well,
We're
well,
very
thank
excited to see you as we move into 2024. And Charlie recalled it was 4 years ago that we had you on in this crazy experiment that
July 2020.
we had no idea how long it would last, and it's lasted for 4 years. And you were the very
I
first guest,
know.
and it's
And
kind of
we're
remarkable.
still surviving
Yeah.
in those industries. So that's great.
That is actually true. So tell us how Helium is surviving. I think the last time we mentioned your story, you were getting an investment from Mayo Clinic.
Yes, investment from Mayo, and also, new sales channel partners. And essentially, for your listenership who isn't familiar, Helium is an immersive media channel, either in regular flat video or in immersive media that's powered by your body's electricity. So anything that captures data, our technology turns it into media and makes it reactive to you. And so, yes, that's exciting. This is a mental health emergency right now, right? Since not only the aftermath of the pandemic, but for companies and the aftermath of the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, we have a lot of trauma going on in the world. So, Helium's uniquely positioned to provide a drug-free coping mechanism to quickly downshift the nervous system.
So
But
wait,
yes,
so wait,
bringing
tell
on
tell
new
us
partners.
tell us how that works. How does the Helium do that?
So via media, my background is as the television journalist. Spent long time covering trauma, rapes, murders, homicides. We went in with the trauma teams in the aftermath of the tsunami in Sri Lanka and in Indonesia, and developed these tools for the people that I covered. We had to cover the worst day of their lives a lot of times, as well as for me. And anyone else who wants to feel better and find a drug-free way to downshift their nervous system. And so yeah, these are digiceuticals, drug-free solutions, not a replacement for psychotropic medication or professional counseling, which we all know has value to some individuals. This is a fitness tool and a way that you can actually see your feelings or your heart rate that comes from any fitness tracker, that we can turn that bio data into assets instead of being a flat number on your wrist. It's spatial, it's set out into the world, and you can actually see it and learn to control it.
Got
And
you.
in the 4 years that we've been tracking, certainly, the world has gone through massive change. We are not likely ever through what has become this new virus that now lives with us in various ways. It's springing itself back up again in various forms. Certainly, the vaccines have removed it from a sort of death-oriented, many people are dying world to something more evolved and better than that. Although not perfect. Where have you gone in that sort of 4 year span as a company in terms of your success and growth, and beyond the Mayo Clinic, who else is sort of involved in it? And then maybe the second part of the question is, how do people find it? How do they deploy it? And is there an individual cost, or is it absorbed by the health providers and the insurance companies?
So, first off, it's used in areas of stress, things that suck that we all have to go through, right? Areas of acute situational or confined stress. So you'll find Helium in a number of VA hospitals around the nation. Other enterprises, healthcare institutions are using it for nurses for compassion fatigue. And entities are realizing that when you reduce and give people tools to learn to self regulate, that improves human performance. And if we've learned anything in the aftermath of the pandemic, is that we all need self coping mechanisms. And that, just as you work out your body to reduce the likelihood that you need to go to the doctor, the same tools need to be out there for you to do the same thing with your mind. And you need not just one digiceutical in your quote unquote medicine cabinet, you need an arsenal, right? And so, that narrative around mental wellness, we lose 20 veterans a day to suicide, right?
Mm.
And what we're seeing is a mental health emergency coming back on the heels of the pandemic. And Healium, is one of the tools that we all need in our digital medicine cabinet.
So,
And you
Sarah,
can get it
question for you.
at your employer or healthcare organization or on our site.
Sarah, question for you. I wasn't here on your first podcast, so congrats. I'm like the later added guest host. But one, I would definitely a question and a comment. I'm very much aware of some, I would say, massive capital that's going to get behind cognitive neural health and neuroscience. So I won't go into any detail. Using other means like software based and things like that. Like Adam Ghazali played with that at UCSF, and I think there's a really interesting movement there. So I would definitely implore you to stay the course because I think you're going to see a really interesting shift. It's a gigantic unmet need, and a lot of pharmaceuticals don't really do the job well. So there's something really interesting you're on. The question I have for you is, how did you pick this? This may be one of the biggest use cases of XR. As it becomes more validated and as people start to tune that it really is a brain computer interface, which I think you dived into early. What got you to thinking that? Because it is a BCI, and you recognize that. How did you arrive there?
So it was not a linear path. It started with a group of veterans, terminally ill and aging World War II vets. They weren't able to physically travel to see their memorials in Washington, D.C. One of my beats as a reporter was covering these veterans. And we needed a tool that would allow them to feel like they were on what's called an honor flight at their World War II, Vietnam, Korea memorial, even though they weren't there. And so, back in the early days, gosh, in uh, 2013 with Google Cardboard, right? Was it that? Yeah, holy cow, we're old. 2013, we started giving virtual tours to a group of these veterans who weren't able to physically travel and noticed that VR was impacting their physiology. They took off the headset or the cardboard and they said, "Hey, I like how I felt. Can I watch that again?" And Google Glass back in 2013 was the first ways that we were live streaming these tours back to these veterans. Obviously, we needed a better way that was scalable, that we didn't have to have a live person live streaming from their face every time. And so we started doing brain maps on individuals to see how this kind of media impacted their physiology. And can we create it in a very specific way that can impact their alpha, beta, theta, gamma brain patterns? And then the answer to that is yes, you can. In 8 peer-reviewed journals, significant, reductions in um, the stress reaction, the fast activity in the brain, mood improvement, anxiety, self-report, and also quantitative data via full, EEG brain scan maps. And so what we quickly discovered, and my background as a media technologist, was, these assets aren't just for entertainment or travel. They actually have the ability to impact physiology. And so we started integrating biosensors, any biosensor that's out there. And our technology and tools lives between the bio data and the media asset, and then changes that asset according to the bio data.
So we maybe should just, for the listener's reference point, because as you're talking, if in real time they're listening to it and they're searching around trying to find it, Healium, your company, is not spelled the same way as the gas that goes in balloons and makes your voice high. It's heal, as in healing, HEAL, eum.com, correct? So that's how you find it. It's heal like the phrase that way.
Yeah, it's actually
And
try
try
healing.
helium
Mm-hmm.
is
Yep, heal is a root word. Yep.
there you go. So the website's tryhelium.com in that HEAL form. And you're very, and Charlie and I and Roni were just talking about this in terms of right size applications for virtual reality, because still to this day, you're still a very VR centric company, right? I mean, using biosensors on the head, and then watches and all kinds of other things to track all the feedback that exists as an ecosystem of products. But primarily, your device for this forms of therapy and rebuilding back neural pathways and so forth is using virtual reality headsets, right? Which you've seen in 4 years have evolved quite interestingly and naturally for your benefit as well, correct?
So we are a software company. We don't make any headsets, or we don't make the fitness trackers. And we're medium agnostic. So Healium, you can find it on your mobile device in flat video. You can find it in immersive media. We're on wherever video is. Uh, that's where Healium is. And going forward in the future with the Humane AI pin, any place that has media, you could also power that media and make it reactive with Helium's tools. And it's not just a content channel, but also creators also have the ability to upload their content to Helium, and it can add those biofeedback and neurofeedback integrations for them. And then they can get a readout of how did that piece of media impact brain patterns or heart rate. So these tools are valuable in learning to self-regulate, but they're also valuable for creators as well, to be able to know how is their impact, how is their particular story or media impacting brain patterns or heart rate biodata signals.
Why did I think there was like a band that detected your brain waves, or was it? Am I misremembering it, or is it
No,
a
I think that's
bracelet?
right. I think
Yeah,
that's part of the
Yeah,
system.
it's we work with any third party wearable.
got it.
So EEG headbands, right? And not a lot of people have EEG headbands, and so we bundle them together with our product to make it easy for the
I
consumer.
see.
Yeah, but there are installed user bases of Apple Watches. Healium works with Apple Watch. We recently onboarded the Samsung Galaxy Watch. There's a large user
Nice.
base of Samsung Galaxy Watch. So we don't make any of the hardware. We are a media channel that's powered by
Understood.
your body's electricity.
So, do you have competitors? Who would you consider your competitors? I know there are many sort of relaxation and uh, self-care apps. There's a Trip, which is doing immersive stuff for mental health care and self-care. So what competitive set are you in, and what products do you consider to be your main competitors, or successful companies that you emulate?
So first and foremost, competitors are also, you don't need just one, right? You
No, of
need a whole
course,
bunch of
right.
them because they all do different things.
And by the way, I always think competitors is a good thing because it shows you're in a growing
Absolutely.
category with a big audience, and uh, one that can support multiple companies. So I view all of that as a positive. If you're out there by yourself, you're either going to get killed or you're going to remake the world.
Right. And so you might think of Helium like a future headspace or Calm, right? That's connected, and that's our unique, value proposition. You aren't just passively watching this media; you're reacting to it, and then those creators also have the ability to, allow the media to be reactive to them. But the greatest competitor is, the ability to close your eyes, right, and meditate. And there are a variety of different flavors of meditation. Healium is just one of them. And instead of close your eyes and meditate, which certainly has value for people, this is open your eyes and see your own brain patterns or heart rate displayed and personified into something you can actually learn to control. And I think that's really going to be the shift in meditation going forward in the coming years, are these biodata signals that are being baked into easy to access modalities like earbuds, right? EEG is already being baked into
Mm,
earbuds. You don't, always just have to have a headband on your forehead or even a smartwatch on your wrist. It's coming into our fabrics. And so,
Mm,
we live in between that wearable
mm.
and the media asset in, being that tool that allows people to self-regulate. But Calm, Headspace, a lot of companies are doing very pioneering work in this space. And, we don't just have the ability to provide the content, we can also equip other creators with our tools that can allow them to do the same thing.
Sarah, are you uh whatever you can tell us about it, are you looking at the Apple Vision Pro? Because I'm just imagining and obviously read about Helium, know about it, what you're doing on a device that's gonna be appealing to like a higher end user who probably maps to a lot of the things that Helium's about with like their visual quality and sound quality, which will probably be best in class. Like I'm wondering, does that offer a sea shift for Helium? Does it maybe open a door to become mainstream?
We're excited about all of the new headsets that are coming out, certainly about AVP. Anything that allows people to more easily immerse themselves in media is a good thing because we know that immersive media impacts brain patterns and heart rate more significantly than regular 2D and flat media. So we're excited about all of the future tools and goggles that are coming out. Apple being one of them.
Yeah, that was going to kind of drift into my question too, Ronnie. In terms of when you started on this journey, um, was it was your passion more about and your belief structure more about the idea that immersive media, that putting something on and it sort of taking over your visual spectrum, would be the really the thing that unlocks the power of this? And did you evolve into a more neutral kind of media stance, that you're a media based company delivering this on whatever device people have, regardless of, because I think we often view like phones as distractions and problematic in terms of relaxation, but you're maybe finding a different path, that it can exist in both forms. But in terms of your journey, your personal journey, or your co-founder's journey, your company's journey, did you start it as a VR centric oriented company and then evolve it into a more neutral stance, or did you always have this kind of idea that your goal set was going to be, it's a media company that's designed to find this therapeutic benefit, and you didn't really care how it got delivered? That's a curiosity for me.
So it started actually with Glass, right? That was the first media platform that we
Interesting.
would live stream from our face, essentially at these different memorials, and then discovered VR, became a VR company, and realized that the power of immersive media compared to flat media. And we don't consider ourselves a VR company, we consider ourselves a media company, because that line, specifically with what new hardware providers are coming out, is blurring, right? That line between the flat world and the immersive world is very quickly, you have the ability to very quickly go in and out of that now. And so we're ambidextrous as it relates to any fitness tracker, any headset, and any media platform that's on the spectrum of flat to immersive.
Sure, we're hustling toward the end of our show, and there was one thing I wanted to discuss with you. Uh, Along with my co-host, you and I have been in the industry a long time. So we're industry friends, right? We've been seeing each other for 8 years now, 2 or 3 times a year at different events, and one of them is always CES, where Helium has traditionally had a booth. Are you going to have a booth again this year?
We're going to have a presence there. I'm double booked at another event in San Francisco that week, so some of our team will be there, and also be in San Francisco as
But
well.
will you be exhibiting on the floor?
Not on the floor. Yeah.
And so, looking back on all these past CESs, what are you anticipating we're going to be experiencing in Vegas this year?
You ask a good question. I think a lot of AI, right? From XR combined with AI, XR combined with biosensors. Those are all of the areas that we're excited about that essentially, make this media easier to consume. We're excited about EEG being baked someday, hopefully, into more earbuds, more sensors being baked into goggles to make it easier to, not only see your feelings, but to discover their power. So I will be at CES on the last 2 days. Would love to connect with anyone there. My team will be there all week as well. But yeah, have an event in San Francisco that we're on a panel on that conflicts. Is actually the biotech showcase. So if you all are in San Francisco and are planning to attend that event, definitely check it out.
Ted and I will be there for the duration. My back notwithstanding, we may be doing something on Thursday night. I will email you about that. Any listeners, by the way, who want to get together with us, send me an email at cdfink or at thisweekinxr@gmail, and we'll see what we can do about including you in our plans.
Yes, we do some gatherings at CES. Absolutely.
Yes, so that's one of the best parts about CES is seeing Sarah and all of our other friends every year. It seems like kind of at this point, it's an inflection point in our lives and in our year because so much flows from that. I would add to by the way, we have Gary Shapiro next week, who is the CEO of CES. So he'll give us a real thorough rundown because CES is the consumer everything show today because electronics have gotten so intimate with us. You mentioned fabric. Last year, there was a fabric booth. It's actually, I believe, a company called Meta also that is making fabric with sensors in it. And I think that has absolutely got huge potential, particularly for a company that's using biometrics and feedback the way Healium is. So I think we'll see a lot of that. Yes, AI everywhere. We had metaverse everywhere. That's gone now, replaced by AI everywhere. And of course, I think the glasses thing that's happening now with headsets as screen reflectors, has become a big deal. So many companies coming out with products. I think some of them are quite popular. So you're going to see more of it.
Yeah,
right?
there are like 6 or 7 companies that have very low cost extend your smartphone, and I think Sarah, that's an interesting field. As you look at so many people using smartphone, but
yeah,
if you
a
want
lot of them do eye tracking and 3DOF-ish stuff.
Yeah.
So I do think that there's a niche developing there.
Hey, could I mention real
Yes.
quickly before we close out the Honor Everywhere program? Honor Everywhere is that free program for veterans that we started many years ago that allows them to virtually visit their memorials. That's now expanded. We've open sourced that software, so you can find it on most any mental wellness immersive media platform. Behave VR, Penumbra, other partners, Manage XR, Arbor XR, Clean Box Technology, all of marquee brands in the XR space have come together to share this content. So if you know an aging or terminally ill World War II veteran, a Korea, Vietnam veteran who hasn't had the opportunity to see their memorial, tell them about the program that's on all of these companies' headsets now that allow them to virtually visit. So just want to put that plug in there. And if you want more information, you can go to honoreverywhere.com or check out any of those other VR companies that I mentioned. Mind VR also has the content as well. There are about a dozen different VR companies that have banded together to share that.
Sarah, it has been a pleasure having you on the show, the 173rd show, as well as the first show. So we have learned a lot from you. Your professionalism and your poise hopefully has rubbed off on us a little bit. Anyway, that's our show. Thank you for coming. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Come back next week. We'll have Gary Shapiro, and we'll talk about CES some more. And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays, everyone. Enjoy the end of the year.
You too.